Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I'm your host, Mystery Red. This is my disclaimer. This beta read in Concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're doing a beta read in Concrete. We're looking at a memoir. I'm doing some work for No-Ant-5039 and we are looking at some notes where I'm kind of looking back over things. She's written some specific notes to me that we're just going to kind of peruse through. We're going to check out these notes and see if we can answer some questions. I have just minimized something that I think we needed, and I don't know if I can get it back. One of their questions to me is, let's see, as a big picture reader response, while it's currently too short, I'm wondering if you see the minimum requirements of a memoir and the themes and growth coming through. So, okay. As I'm reading it, I get where you were coming from in the story. And as we're reading it here and there throughout, you've also referenced where you're at today, which is wonderful. And then in a recent chapter, I can't remember which one, there was where you, I think, might have been in rehab with there's two men, and I think I asked for more information about the men, and maybe it'll come up when I read through here, but I'm wondering if an opportunity to gain words would be to elaborate on the healing process and maybe give that a chapter in itself or something, that kind of transition out of darkness, I guess, maybe. But I'm finding your reading very satisfying. I find your writing stunning. So as for whether or not it meets the requirements for memoir, they're not my specialty. I'm a fiction writer, but I also do really, really, really well at writing emotions, as I think that we've all established. So I thought, well, if I was studying to write a memoir, if that's what I set out to do, what would I do? Well, I'd literally look up the format of a memoir. When writing fiction, my brilliant and thoughtful husband was like, she can write, but does she really know what she's doing? And a lot of my writing talent comes naturally and intuitively, but that doesn't mean I didn't have to study and learn to develop different skills. And I don't always remember the name for every technique or every part of the process or even every step of the story. And there is a structure and there are steps. And what would interestingly happen for me is I'd go back and read something I wrote and find out that it does fulfill all of the steps, but I did it intuitively. So I kind of learned a little bit backwards, and it's not as finessed as some professional writers will be. I mean, a lot of people will find a structure, follow the structure diligently, and there's a textbook and a rule, and that's how it is. But those same people don't really like what I'm doing here with this video format for beta reading. They're really upset by it. So anyway, I have books that I referenced. I keep meaning to pull them back out because they were excellent reference books, and I didn't use the whole entire thing. I would use parts. I'd read through it for the parts that answered the questions I had and the information I needed. And literally, one of those books is How to Write a Book for Dummies. Okay, there's probably one called How to Write a Memoir. I'm sure there probably is. I mean, they made one for everything, and they're handy little reference books. But anyway, I just went in and I Googled the format of a memoir so that I could better ask and answer Ant's questions. Okay, how to write a memoir. We're not going to read that, but we're going to look through to see if we get the bones of it. So let's see through here. 7 common mistakes in a first-time memoir. Confusing a memoir with autobiography. Telling a story already told, shoehorning several books. I don't see you doing any of these problems. Confusing memoir with journaling. No. Overdoing the family history. You did not. You didn't. I don't think that was overdone at all. Chronology mismanagement. I don't think so. I like where you started. I felt someone was talking about your memoir the other day to my friend, and she said, did she write it chronologically? And I'm like, actually, no. And I discouraged it because if you started, things probably started with mom. And if you started the book with mom, it would be like anybody else's book. So, I mean, and then where would it, it just lost, it would lose some tension. I really feel like it would lose some tension and some of the drama and some of the curiosity that kind of follows through as to why, as the person is reading, you're wondering what are the motivations for this until you get that answer. And the timing worked for me in the way that I read it, and it kept your tension going, and it kept the reader engaged and asking these questions, which was why, as I'm turning the pages, I'm like, why did this happen? What happened? Something motivated these things. So that worked for me. Okay, 7 common mistakes in a first-time memoir. Characteristics. There was something down here. What qualifies a book to be a memoir? A memoir is a narrative written from the perspective of the author about an important part of their life. And you have done that. It's definitely about a specific part of your life. And it's not covering the entirety of your life, which would be an autobiography. And there it literally says that same thing. But it's showing us a glimpse of a specific time in your life, or a specific series of events in your life that really threatened your life, and very, very dangerous. All the things that I'm reading, that in all kinds of situations that were dangerous for you. So that's, to come out of that is life-changing. Okay, what makes a memoir stand out? Emotional beats. And you do a beautiful job. Your writing is beautiful. I'm very caught up in it. Your word choices are excellent. Your visuals and your descriptions and everything lend to sensation and being very invested. So we are on an emotional journey, and that's probably why I find myself talking about your memoir. So good job. Okay, breaking down the key elements of a memoir. Okay, let's look down here. What makes a memoir stand out? What should a memoir always include? Bare bones. Narrow your focus. Done. Include more than just your story. Might want to look at that part. Tell the truth. Yes. Put your readers in your shoes. Yes. Enjoy elements of fiction to bring your story to life. Yes. So what that means is to draw some of the same elements in fiction storytelling, some of the same formatting, some of the same elements, the techniques. It does not mean make something up. It literally is referring to the structure of fiction writing, which is probably why I'm able to kind of pull this off, because the worlds are close. In this situation, you are the main character. Create an emotional journey. Definitely did that. Showcase your personal growth. This part, I think we can expand on. So that gives us an opportunity to gain words, which was something that you were concerned about, was your word count. And we're going to go down there and talk about that here. Memoirs can be longer. So it talks about nonfiction books, but then it says down here, memoirs can be between 240 and 520 pages. It is okay, absolutely okay, to go for the small end of that. Okay, I don't know what your word count is right now. I didn't ask that yet. And we're going to flip back over and look at your comments and stuff on your document. I don't think what I have is the entirety of the document, so I'm not sure what your current word count is or what's your page count. And I tend to lean more towards word count than looking at page count, because that can be changed by formatting the document. And there's probably a recommended format for a memoir, as in margins and where they want page numbers and whether they want a footer and all those things. And so you will need to look into that before you query your memoir. But with the word count, that's kind of what I use when I'm gauging where I'm at in my story. So I don't know what your word count was, but I do see an opportunity to expand on it by showcasing your personal growth. I think we can dig deeper there. And there were probably a couple of parts that I remember. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I do remember a couple times when I was reading where I was questioning for you to give more, like to give up more detail or more information, or to answer a question or to explain something. And those would be opportunities to gain some words as well. Let's see. How many pages is a good book? Well, that depends on what type of book you're writing. I'm going to go back to this for a second, where I did tell you that it's okay to be on the lower end. And the reason I'm going to say that is because, and I don't know what the current trend is, because it's been a couple of years since I was trying to query my own piece, which is now in a rework. But At the time, and it's probably the same because our attention spans are shorter, it's okay to have a shorter book. If you have accomplished your goals in your piece and you are satisfied with it and you come out on the lower end of the numbers, don't worry about that so much. It's not a terrible thing. You don't want to be below the recommended. You want to be at least right at it. But if you're right at it, don't worry that you don't have enough and you want to be somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't even worry about that. I'd kind of just gauge for that lower end number. And I don't think it would be a bad thing just based on how society works, how much time we have to commit to reading a book. We may be more inclined to pick up a smaller book if we know we're in a hurry and we're on the go. So don't worry too much about that part. Let's see. What is a memoir? 5 points. Nonfiction work, the person writes about their own experiences. How to write a memoir step by step. Figure out who you're writing for, narrow down your memoir's focus, distill the story into a log line, choose the key moments to share, don't skimp on the details in the dialogue, portray yourself honestly. I feel like you're hitting all the marks. And I had made notes in my little notebook off to the side so that I could kind of keep these rules of writing memoirs in mind as I read yours so that I could see if you were checking off the boxes. And I kept an eye out for that as I was reading. But I've got notes for multiple people that I'm reading for. So now I'm like, where did my notes go? I do believe that you were checking the boxes off because I kept my eye out for it as we were going. I like your piece, and I feel like you're in the right direction. We just have to look for places where we might be able to get you those words that you want to accomplish your goal. I do think that you can expand on your healing process, your thought change, the pivotal moment. I think we can elaborate on that. I have got so many pages in this notebook and I have written all over them that I now cannot find. But I do recall that I did have a list that I would pull out. I'm probably flipping right by it because it's one of those things where it's like right in front of you, but because you're doing multiple things, you can't find it exactly the moment. I probably should have looked it up before we got started, and then I was like, wait, I have this. And I thought it might appear for me, and it's not. I'm getting all my stuff for everyone else that I read for. Yeah, I'm going to quit looking for it. It's annoying me now. Yes, I had a list and I would pull it up as we were reading, but then I got to where you said we kind of got to the backbone part. So now we're going to dive over and start reading your notes. I feel like you're checking off the boxes for me from what I don't have a vast backlog of knowledge to fall on for a memoir, but if it recommends following some of the elements of fiction. So we kind of used my experience in that. I'm finding the story very satisfying, and I would like more, I think, on the healing part. So let's look at your notes and see if I can answer any questions in there. So yes, let's see some edits and comment questions. To my forever love, formerly Mr. Tinder. Yes, these are chapter titles. Oh, Oblivion full speed ahead. Yes, these are chapter titles. I have a lot, but not all of them figured out. It will be consistent with all of them having one. Okay. And then to the Tuna Lucero song, we kicked off what would be my final bender. We were up most of the night deep in conversation, and despite conviction, nothing was important enough to remember now, some 5 years later. Sometimes I can tell who has or hasn't ever used drugs based on comments, and this line has received mixed feedback. I have had readers totally get this conviction behind the manic philosophical fueled conversations, and others that are just like, what, cut this. And I do switch from past to a present thought of, while it seemed passionate and important, obviously it wasn't. Can't remember it now. I happen to like the line, but do you think I should tweak it and not add the 5 years later thought? We were up most of the night deep in conversation, and despite conviction, nothing was important enough to remember now, some 5 years later. No, I think that's fine. The 5 years later part doesn't bother me at all. No, I think it's fine. We're gonna move on. The only thing that bothers me about this is that you've got people, if more than one person is pointing this line out to you, here's the thing. You are the writer. If you love this line, you get to choose to keep it. That's the bottom line. But if you've got multiple people pointing it out to you, I would spend a minute thinking about that. It doesn't, as I'm reading it right here and now, and I'm fine with, especially with your question, and I'm ready to move on. But I do want to say to you that if more than one person points out the exact same thing, you probably need to take a look at it. I can get what you're saying, though. You're saying the people who have used, they immediately get it. And the people who haven't are like, what is this? Take this out. I don't get it. Okay, so I think if I was trying to make a choice based on that, that would go back to who is the person that you are reaching out for. Who is the person you are writing this book for? Honestly, for myself, when I write for me. I honestly write what I want to read. I write what I need to heal, and I write what I want to read. So bottom line, I'll take someone else's suggestions, but whether or not I actually implement them, at the bottom line is, am I going to be happy with it if I do? So if this line makes you happy, you have every right to keep it. And then the people that understand will get it, and the people that don't, they'll just keep going. They're just going to keep going. The average reader is going to keep going. They might give a moment, like that sensation of not being in the know. All right, that's enough of my rambling. Where to go? Your presence soothed every part of me. Is there a note for this? Because it's like highlighted. I'm going to click it. Is there a note? Maybe it's just new. Oh, maybe you highlighted new parts. Okay, let's read it. Let's go back a second so we can get context. Swirling, orbiting, ideas racing, accompanied by surges of fear. Being there in the house on the hill was so surreal, so removed from reality. We withdrew up above the roads, beyond the signpost, reachable only by satellite. As you slept next to me, I crawled into myself. I didn't understand then, in the psychiatric downward spiral of a come down, that contradictory realities could be true at the same time. Your presence soothed every part of me. I wanted you with a fierce selfishness, but in my heart of hearts I knew there was nothing sustainable about how we existed the moment we deviated from the highway below. During the week when we weren't together, the silence in my room amplified the narratives in my head. The window of time between getting off work and falling asleep stretched open a doorway inviting in loneliness. I had found myself desperate for distractions on more than one occasion. For this, I hated myself. Lying there beside you, shame thrived inside me. Fighting the come down, my breath was fast, shallow, and ineffective. I knew I'd never deserve you. Jaw grinding, I was so full of love. And I was so full of doom. A fear of consequences catching up to me from the lies and from the lines rattled up my spine, jolting my heart. I like it. I like it. I wouldn't change anything. We're going to keep going. We're going to skip down here to this note. Want to complete the loop or go to the windmill? We haven't done that in a while, I said. You agreed. We decided to drive down to the base of the structure, as if you had any business operating a vehicle. With the back seat of the car folded down, we made a cozy area to lounge under the windmill. You were noticing huge turkey feathers here and there, and then enough to convince us there had probably been an attack. The feathers were mottled with soft browns and black, their iridescent luster catching the sunlight. They were beautiful, and following the wind collecting them seemed as good an idea as any for how high we were. We inhaled the last off your iPad in the back of the car and then strolled down, following feathers across the hillside. At some point you captured a photo of me, standing, looking up. One of 2 photos from that weekend. In a side profile, my hands are cupped around my eyes like makeshift binoculars. Braless in a white tank top, the migration of birds from my rib tattoo flies toward my right shoulder, just visible amongst a constellation of freckles. A few years earlier, I had tattooed a compass on my ribs. The design was inspired by a poem that pitted the path of expectations against the pull of the heart. My compass has no dial. I had fancied myself as someone forging off the beaten path, believing the secret to life was in the mess of jukebox songs, turkey feathers, long kisses, and the beehive by the old barn. In truth, I was lost. Freaking beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. Oh my God. It's freaking, I love it. I like the concept of not having the dial on the compass too. So I like the whole thing. I love the textures and the visuals, and you've got sound, and you've got soft, and you've got tender, and then you've got a sting. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, we're going to keep going. Okay. Paragraph below in lieu of adverb, admiringly. Okay. Wow, you got a whole paragraph out of avoiding an adverb? Look, we found words. Okay. The television was on in my parents' sunroom, but my dad was nowhere to be seen. They had recently gathered and moved all the household alcohol from the kitchen to a box on the floor of my dad's closet. With the door slit open, I sat before the handles on the floor. The amber of the gem beam maintained an enticing glow through thick glass. Next to it, the green bottle of the Tanqueray, adorned with a stamp of red wax, reflected the room's dim shadows. The gray goose, sleek and frosted, stood tall like a trophy. Each bottle exerted a quiet pull, holding my gaze and promising more than their contents. Good job. I love it. Nice. I love it. Cause see, that's one of the things that enticed me towards alcohol was all the pretty bottles. But to give you some comparison, this is funny. At least I hope you all find it as funny as I do. I now have that same kind of draw, but instead of to bottles of liquor, it's to crayons and markers. It's true. I have to have all of the colors. So whenever I walk past the stationery, which I'm also I want the stationery, but I know I'm not going to use it, so I don't buy it. But I have a coloring addiction with blending the colors that are colored pencils, markers, and crayons. And so I will go over and I will buy all the different, you know how like Crayola makes pastel, Crayola neon, Crayola bold, Crayola, and then they give it like, there's like, what is it, colors of kindness or something. They have all these themes, and then they have packs of colors that are like inside the boxes. Well, I'm addicted to those. And so I will go over and buy all the varieties. There's a love-hate relationship for like when they're having the back to school sales. I'm not buying them for my kids. I'm buying them for me. Okay, I'm going to get off my little tangent. But I just think about this. I remember asking you to describe them because that's appealing. It shows the appeal of something. And we think about it, that's how marketing works. They make something look very attractive by appealing to our senses. And essentially, we're doing the same thing when we write. So, here we go. Let's see. I am thinking this is so long. Should the chapter be split in two? This is a good splitting spot. Oh, okay. With a long blink into consciousness, the circled driveway of my home came to focus. You know what? If you think so, then yes, because it's not giving you more words, but it does give you another chapter. It's the same number. It's not helping your word count, but at the same time, if it is kind of, is it longer than the rest of them? And honestly, with chapters, it doesn't, a chapter can be 1 page, a chapter can be 10 pages. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish within that chapter. I think that might be entirely an intuitive decision for you. If you're contemplating it and you want to, do it. If you think it's fine and working, then roll with it. So we're thinking this is a good spot. Yeah, you know what? If you've got the Oblivion Full Speed Ahead, that's the title, right? I remember that being the title of this chapter. Yeah, there it is. I would end it there. Absolutely. That's a good breaking spot. And now I've lost my spot. Where did we go? Okay. Actually, yes, I'm going to agree with you because I like ending. I like ending on the title of the chapter. You don't want it to lose its punch. So Yes. Okay, well, let's keep going. Any other questions? Does this distract and take away from the momentum and tension? Okay, let's go back a paragraph before we read this to see what happens. And because that's kind of a short line, I'm actually going to go back a little bit further. One of the nurses scanned her lanyard badge against a box fastened on the wall. A voice came through confirming they were ready for me. With that, the door opened and I was ushered in to complete the duration of a 72-hour hold per the state of California. In a corner office, a doctor with a good sense of humor asked me to hold out my hands. Well, they aren't trembling, he noted with a hint of surprise. He was good looking, but short. I kind of want a comma there. He was good looking, like, that's just, well, I'll put it there. He was good looking, but short. A young guy. Not that I thought of myself as old, but it occurred to me more and more medical professionals were young. They had graduated medical school and secured dignified jobs to treat dropout drunks like myself. Apparently, he and I met last night in the ED, but I didn't have any recollection of this. No, keep it. You're looking to gain words anyway, and I like you kind of like musing a little bit over what's going on around you. It gives us it pulls the reader closer into your scene. These are the kind of thoughts that rolled through your head, the musings that passed through as you were there in that moment. As long as you're being true to what happened in the moment, the thoughts that passed through your mind, then you're gaining some words, and you're also kind of showing your headspace of where you were, okay, where your thoughts were. And that's good too, especially, you're looking, like we said, you're looking to gain words, so you can afford to do that, and you do it beautifully, and it fit right in. So yeah, it worked fine for me. I don't think it takes away from the tension because it gives me where your headspace was, as long as it's true to that. And because it was your experience, I don't know that, but you do. So these are kind of like, if you remember noticing him, leave it, because part of the other thing is going to be, I'm going to need to follow your headspace and the kind of change in the progression that happens as you go to heal. So, as you come out of this, your thoughts and the way that you think should change. And we should be experiencing that with you as you go through that healing process. And that's why I'm asking you to give us more of the healing part of your journey. The way you see things and the way you think about them probably would change. You may be able to see things and see what was harmful about them. It's a different perspective. It's a different point of view when you're on the other side. And then you might gain some distance from it and feel more secure, whatever. But we're on that journey and with you. We want to experience that. So that's working fine for me. What's this say? Does this work? Can I format in an exact date? I have had people trying to orient the timeline and think it could work as a letter where it may not fly in traditional novel format. Oh, that's an interesting question. Introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous a few years before, December 18th, 2015 to be exact, I had a sporadic track record of attending meetings. I even got a big book which I proceeded to highlight and annotate in a blackout. My sloppy drunken handwriting made me cringe, so I recycled. I like it. I actually like how you tucked it in there. It's working for me. Now, I am not a memoir pro, though, but at the same time, I like how you did it. I think it flowed right in there seamlessly, almost like it's punctuated, because you said to be exact, and so it felt punctuated, even the way you've got the hyphens around it. I like it. I personally like it. We could probably research it. I would suggest, for technical aspects, I don't want to give you bad advice, so I would suggest searching that to find out if there's any kind of rule. Just search using dates in memoirs and see if it has a recommendation. Or maybe if you're on a forum where other people are writing memoirs, you might be able to find out someone who has more of the more experience with them than what I do. Personally, as I'm reading this works just fine for me. I even like how you did it, and so that's where I'm going to go with it. Let's see. We're going to go down here, and we're going to start up here. Looks like we got some new words. But, all right. Yep. Okay, here we go. Okay, I had to stop, and I am in carpool, so we'll see what happens, because that's always interesting. It's an interesting place. It's not what you'd envision. Okay. They both detailed their drinking careers, the consequences that ensued, and their inability to stop in the face of those aforementioned repercussions. The cowboy had been in and out of his same hospital with kidney and liver failure. Out of this same hospital with kidney and liver failure. Upon discharge, he would return home to down another bottle. There was a pain inside of me that they clearly understood, because they both spoke of it. Hopelessness. These rugged volunteers sat amongst our colorful group of crazies and held space for the grief one can only know in the face of utter desperation. Okay. That's working. Let's keep going. What would prevent me from my next sip of whiskey once back in the real world? I really couldn't tell you, but I will say, the day I was admitted to the local emergency department by ambulance was August 26, 2019, and I haven't had a drink since. On occasion, I think about that cowboy and motorcycle rider. For a long time, I thought I would bump into them, but our paths never crossed again. I kind of want a comma, like right there, maybe. I am not the best one to listen to on that front. I would have told them they reached me when no one else could, and I would thank them for saving my life. Out in the garage above your workbench remains one turkey feather from that weekend. It is a powerful reminder, but its context goes even deeper. Remember how excited I was to Google the symbolism of their feathers? It represents a connection to the spiritual realm, often associated with transformation, letting go of the past and embracing new beginnings. A fitting token and a reminder to give thanks. I wanted to tie in this bit about the turkey feather, but I couldn't get it into the storyline without distracting from the scene that's so important. Is it okay here as a conclusion, or is it actually stronger with it? No, I like the conclusion. My car is doing something strange. I don't really know what it is. Okay. No, I actually was going to say I like this here. So no, keep it. Okay, moving down. Did we have notes? Why are you making noise? I don't know why it's a little... Oh my goodness. Okay. We're looking... Oh, here we go. Let's see. The marriage vows had a line about your forgiving love that conjures my tears. So I'm not sure about the verb tenses. Most of this has been past tense. Now I was trying to switch to present tense, like as if I was writing this and the sting is fresh and looking over our vows are a source of tears. Then imagine present writing the letter, crying to think of the vows, and I sweep away the tears. The air from the fan cools the wet trail. His vows express a love. They still do. See what I mean? Is that just too confusing that I should make it all past tense? Or is there a rule about switching back and forth? Maybe a way to punctuate that would make it clear? Not sure. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, so sometimes, and I've actually got a couple people doing this right now. Sometimes internal thoughts are italicized in fiction, and sometimes they're not. It seems like a style preference, as far as I know. But when I'm thinking memoir and you're in first person, all of this is really your thoughts. This is you telling your story. I'm inclined to suggest that we get into whatever, all one tense, and kind of stick with it. Even though you have present tense, because it's still continuing in the present is basically what it sounds like is your reservation. Like it still goes on today. But I think maybe you could even just say that your marriage vows had a line about your forgiving love that conjured tears. With both hands, I swept the salty outpour across my cheeks in unison, shaking them out at my ears. The air from the bedroom fan cooled the wet trail they left in their wake. So this is like you, present you, looking back on something that happened in the past. Oh, and it's a little bit different for you because you're coming into the present. This is an interesting thing to think about, because part of me is like, is it? I've not read enough memoirs or worked with them enough to be like, can you start in the past and then gradually you transition to the present in the actual memoir? Is that even... I mean, I would personally find that kind of cool, but okay. The thing with past and present tense, it's pick one and stick to it. Yes, sometimes you will, like in a flashback, you would flip. If you are writing in present tense, or writing in present tense, and then you look back, then that would be in past tense, but it has a small segmented part, and it's very clear at the beginning and the end. It's not... You don't want to switch back and forth mid-paragraph, if that answers your question or if that helps. You do not want to do that, because it's just too much. Unless you added a style, like to italicize, but typically that is... I mean, I guess I was going to say it's reserved for special circumstances, and I guess this could be one. I don't know. I feel like this needs more research. There's a lot to be mused over here. The very simple thing that majority of people are going to tell you is pick one and stick to it, and that's the beginning and end of it. And if you do switch, it should be for a very like a paragraph or a segment, a specific segment of time to accomplish a certain goal, and then immediately switch back and don't flip-flop back and forth between one paragraph. And I do feel confident in saying don't flip back and forth in one paragraph, because it'll trip up your reader. I'm going to leave it at that, because I feel like in a lot of things that we do in writing, there are circumstances that surround every situation. And that's part of why this method of beta reading is so unique. And it offers you not just your reader response, but it also offers, hey, this is one situation where you might do this instead of this. And so we get that through the variety of reading other people's material and sharing it. And I don't know of any other way that we've ever gotten this outside of listening to someone lecture us. So, okay. Just to note, if anyone is seeing the trying to connect box up here, it's because I had to leave my house and my computer is seeking the internet. It shouldn't affect us, because I record these and then I go back and upload them, and I don't need the internet to record them. Let's see. All right. Going on down, making sure I'm not missing anything. As is customary, we would conclude each meeting holding hands. Before someone would lead us out with the Serenity Prayer, they say, a moment of silence for those still suffering, inside and outside of these rooms. Okay, I'm going to read over here. I'm confused about this one too. So at the end of every meeting, we gather and hold hands, and the secretary says, for example, Mandy, will you please lead us out with a prayer of your choice? Then I would say, after a moment of silence for those still suffering, inside and outside of these rooms, let's do the Serenity Prayer. Then we pause for that silence, and then God grant me, and the whole group joins in saying it in unison. So I was sort of thinking out loud as I typed this, maybe if I just take out the and. Okay. Before someone would lead us out with the Serenity Prayer, I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm thinking if we just said, before someone would lead us out with the Serenity Prayer, we hold a moment of silence for those still suffering inside and outside of these rooms. Or you could even quote, you could even put it in here like dialogue and have the lady, whoever the group leader is, as is customary, we would conclude each meeting holding hands. The group leader prompted me, this time the group leader prompted me to lead us out with a prayer of your choice, a prayer of my choice. As we always did, as was our custom, I said, I could still hear myself saying, after a moment of silence for those still suffering inside and outside these rooms, let's do the serenity prayer. And then I held that moment of silence. Maybe, yeah. And then said, God grant me. Yeah. So you could literally write it out like that, where you're writing it out. Yeah. You could write it out like that. As I'm reading it, even taking out the and, it's still kind of awkward. And I think the reason is I gathered what was happening, and I think that you would. Like, I think you'd piece together what was going on. It just reads awkwardly. Before someone would lead us out with a serenity prayer, they say a moment of silence for those still suffering inside and outside. I think my suggestion is just going to be to kind of write it out as was our custom, and then that lets you know it's the routine. Yeah. So whatever I just said, I know what I just said, but I'm going to try not to repeat myself, which is my tendency, and I'm trying to work at that. So, yeah, that's going to be my suggestion for that line. Let's see. We're going to move on down here. Originally, chapter 2 that you didn't read gets bumped to chapter 3 from New Edition. Well, I don't want... Oh, it does say public. Okay. So, I can literally flow into this chapter, but it looks like I'm already at 42 minutes just going over the revisions. So I'm going to stop and do a separate read for this, and it is a public video. And we're going to come back and dive into that. Thank you everyone for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time on Mystery Odd Reads.